better known as Caligula, the most chaotic Roman emperor to ever mix religion, power, and very poor impulse control. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from, and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. In Rome, the worst thing that can happen isn't being invisible, it's being noticed. Especially by the people who collect humans the way others collect marble busts. You're minding your own business, probably polishing something that belongs to someone richer than you, when a man in uniform stops you mid-task. He looks you over the way a tax collector looks at a ledger. "The emperor requires attendance," he says. Not a question. Not even a sentence, really. Just a notification that your life has been updated without consent. Before you can protest, you're walking through the forum, surrounded by statues that all look like they're judging your posture. Vendors stare, beggars mutter. Someone tells you to smile because it's an honor. You try, but your face refuses to cooperate. The Palatine Hill rises ahead like a promise and a threat. The imperial palace glitters in the sun, marble, gold, and enough self-importance to be visible from space. You're ushered inside. Everything smells expensive. The walls are painted with gods doing questionable things, which feels appropriate. They take your belongings, your tunic, your wooden comb, your coin for luck, and replace them with silence. A steward gives you new clothes, better food, and a long list of things you're never allowed to do again, starting with speak unless spoken to. It's all very organized, like joining a cult that pays in fear. Other attendants glance at you as you pass. Some smile, most don't. They've learned that expressions are a form of gambling. You hear rumors immediately that the emperor sleeps little, eats too much, and changes personalities more often than his sandals. You're advised to avoid eye contact, but not too much. He might think you're plotting something. Your new room has soft linen sheets and a view of the city. Proof that luxury and anxiety can absolutely coexist. As you lie awake that first night, you hear music, laughter, and something that sounds like weeping. Maybe both. You tell yourself you're lucky. You tell yourself this is promotion, not punishment. But as dawn breaks over the marble rooftops, you realize something chilling. You've been invited to live inside power. And power in Rome always eats its guests. From the outside, the imperial palace looks like paradise with plumbing. You'd think a place with marble floors, golden ceilings, and its own indoor waterfall might inspire awe. And it does, right up until you realize every drop of that luxury was built on someone else's panic. The moment you enter, the air changes. It's perfumed, heavy, and polite, in the way venom is polite before it kills you. The halls stretch forever, lined with guards who stare straight ahead. Not because they're disciplined, but because looking anywhere else has consequences. You're shown the layout by a steward who could guide you blindfolded. He walks briskly, never slowing down, reciting rules like he's describing the weather. Don't speak in the emperor's presence. Don't look at the emperor unless he speaks. Don't breathe too loudly near the emperor. You start to wonder how anyone survives a full conversation here. The servants you pass move like ghosts, silent and precise. They don't make eye contact. They make eye avoidance into an art form. When one drops a cup, nobody gasps. Nobody helps. They just wait. Because the sound of breaking glass travels faster than gossip, and soon enough, a guard appears to remove the problem. And the servant. Meals in the palace are grand, but never relaxing. The food is perfect, the tension is not. Every bite is chewed carefully, because there's always the chance someone poisoned something, not out of hatred, but as a career opportunity. Even laughter feels dangerous. At night, the palace doesn't sleep, it simmers. You hear footsteps echoing through the corridors, muffled commands, and the low hum of people trying to exist quietly enough to survive. The Emperor's personal guards patrol constantly, their armor clinking like wind chimes made of bad decisions. somewhere beyond the next wall, music plays. Flutes, lyres, voices singing praises you can't quite believe. You lie awake on your linen bed, staring at the carved ceiling, and realize something horrifying. The palace isn't built to protect the emperor. It's built to protect everyone else from him. And as the torches flicker in the hallway, you understand the unspoken truth whispered among servants. In Caligula's palace, silence isn't peace, it's policy. You meet him for the first time on a day that smells like olive oil and overconfidence. Gaius Julius Caesar Augustus Germanicus, better known as Caligula, doesn't walk into a room. He arrives, like thunder pretending to be a man. His robe is purple, the royal shade reserved for emperors and people who like reminding everyone else they're not. The crowd of attendants lowers their heads as one, as if they're auditioning for a synchronized bowing team. You do the same, mostly because you enjoy breathing. When you dare a glance up, you see the kind of face sculptors pretend not to copy, sharp, symmetrical, and constantly shifting between amusement and irritation. Caligula's smile looks generous until you realize it's the sort a cat gives a cornered mouse. He doesn't introduce himself. Introductions are for mortals. He asks questions that aren't questions. Do you serve well? Are you loyal? Would you die for your emperor? You answer yes, yes, and, judging by your pulse, probably. Everyone calls him Divine Caesar now. He started small, declaring himself the beloved of Jupiter. Within a few months, he dropped the beloved part and claimed to be Jupiter. Statues of the gods were recarved to bear his face. Some say he even debated Neptune, god of the sea, by shouting at the waves until they surrendered. It worked, technically. You quickly learn that Caligula's palace isn't just his home, it's his stage. Every gesture is theater, every audience mandatory. When he laughs, the entire court laughs. When he stops, the silence hits like a verdict. It's less a government and more a hostage situation with better catering. There are people who say he's brilliant, that his madness is just misunderstood genius. Those people are still alive, which probably explains their enthusiasm. The rest learned that disagreeing with a living god has a short career path. You leave the audience chamber dizzy, both from fear and from the sheer weight of the perfume in the air. Somewhere behind you, the emperor is still talking about glory, destiny, and something involving the moon. You don't know what any of it means. You just know one thing. Rome's most dangerous man now believes he's immortal. And unfortunately, you work for him. You don't sleep that first night. Not because anyone told you not to, but because you're smart enough to realize no one ever sleeps easily in Caligula's palace. When a guard finally appears at your door, you're halfway between panic and resignation. He doesn't speak. He just gestures for you to follow. His armor clinks in a rhythm that sounds like a countdown. You're led through hallways so polished they reflect torchlight like liquid gold, or like something waiting to catch fire. The palace at night feels different. The chatter is gone, the musicians silent, the marble echoing with only footsteps and whispers. Somewhere down another corridor, you hear laughter, the loud, unsteady kind that never ends well for someone. You arrive at a chamber guarded by statues of gods with judgmental expressions. The guard opens the door, and inside sits Caligula, lounging on a couch surrounded by food, wine, and half-asleep attendants who look like they're praying with their eyes open. He doesn't acknowledge you right away. He's busy telling a story to no one in particular about how he once talked to the moon, and it agreed he was divine. No one laughs. They've all heard this story before. When he finally looks at you, it's like standing too close to lightning. New, he says, as if identifying a piece of furniture. He waves a hand. Sit, eat, smile. You do all three, carefully, as though performing sacred rites. The food tastes like anxiety and salt. Caligula watches you eat with interest, as though measuring how fear affects digestion. Then, as quickly as he appeared, his attention shifts to someone else. He asks a senator to sing, a guard to juggle, a servant to dance. No one dares fail. You realize then that you're not in a dining hall, you're in a test. Everyone in the room exists to prove how entertaining survival can look. Eventually, Caligula grows bored. He claps his hands once, stands, and leaves without a word. The room exhales. You're told you may go. You do, quietly, quickly, and without looking back. In any other household, you'd call it a strange evening. In Caligula's palace, it's just Tuesday. And somehow, you've passed your first night alive, which, around here, counts as a promotion. You don't get a mentor, you get a handler. A woman who's been here so long she's forgotten her original name. Everyone just calls her Domna, which probably isn't her real one either, but you don't ask questions. Around here, curiosity is like dessert, tempting, but usually fatal. Domna doesn't shout or scold. She just points at things and explains how not to die near them. That tapestry, don't touch it. It belonged to Tiberius. Caligula hates it. He keeps it there to hate it properly. Or, if he smiles at you, bow. If he laughs, stay still. If he stops laughing, start praying. Your training isn't about skill. It's about silence. You learn to walk without sound, stand without moving, and speak without meaning it. You practice smiling in a mirror until it looks sincere enough to fool a sociopath. You're taught how to eat in front of nobles without making eye contact or chewing too audibly. Apparently, the emperor once executed a man for rude mastication. You don't even know what that means, but you stop enjoying food anyway. Sometimes Domna tests you. She'll drop a cup just to see if you flinch. You do, every time. Good, she says flatly. It means you're paying attention. You begin to understand that fear isn't a weakness here, it's currency. The more alert you are, the longer you last. At night, you share quarters with other attendants, all pretending to sleep while secretly listening for footsteps. Someone always mutters prayers. Someone else always cries. No one tells them to stop. That's considered teamwork. Once, you ask Domna how long she's served. She shrugs. 3 emperors, she says. 1 died naturally. You don't ask which one. You just nod, impressed by her continued existence. By the end of the month, you've learned how to anticipate orders before they're spoken. You've also learned that survival here isn't about loyalty. It's about accuracy. 1 wrong word, 1 wrong glance, 1 sigh too loud. And you're no longer part of the decor. You're part of the cleanup. Banquets in Caligula's palace aren't dinners. They're public endurance tests wrapped in gold leaf. The invitations alone are a death sentence written in cursive. Refuse and you insult a god. Attend, and you spend the night pretending you're having the best time of your soon-to-be-short life. You help prepare the feast, a spectacle so extravagant it could feed a small province, or at least one particularly determined senator. Tables groan under roasted peacocks, gilded grapes, and seafood hauled in from 3 seas, just to die expensively. The wine never stops flowing, though no one dares drink enough to forget where they are. The guests arrive in togas so heavy with embroidery they could double as armor. Senators, generals, poets, and a few people who have no idea why they were invited, all lined up like sacrifices disguised as social climbers. You move silently among them, pouring wine, refilling plates, and avoiding direct eye contact with anyone who looks powerful enough to ruin you for blinking incorrectly. Then, the emperor enters. The room stiffens. Caligula strolls in barefoot, wearing a crown of jewels, and that unsettling half-smile that suggests someone, somewhere, is about to regret existing. He greets no one, yet everyone greets him. He doesn't eat. He observes, like a cat surrounded by nervous mice in expensive sandals. The entertainment begins. Dancers, musicians, poets reading verses that rhyme suspiciously with flattery. Caligula interrupts them constantly, offering suggestions that usually involve less clothing and more discomfort. Laughter ripples through the room. Brittle, desperate laughter that sounds like coins falling into a well. Sometimes he plays games. He'll point at a guest and demand they describe the divine beauty of Caesar. A light smile and a guard's hand on your shoulder. You've seen that smile before. It never ends well. As the night drags on, the air turns thick with perfume and panic. You keep your head low, your tray steady, your soul on standby. Around you, power and terror swirl together like smoke, intoxicating, suffocating, and impossible to escape. By dawn, the guests are gone, the music is over, and the tables are empty. Only the fear stays. It always does. By now, you've learned that Caligula doesn't host events. He stages productions. Everything in his world is theatre, and unfortunately, everyone is cast without consent. He calls it entertainment for the people. You call it a public relations disaster waiting for divine approval. But you don't get to name things here. You just appear when summoned and hope the next scene doesn't involve you. The emperor has decided that the palace should no longer be private. Rome deserves to witness its god in action. So, the gates open, the crowd floods in, and suddenly, your workplace has an audience. Senators stand shoulder to shoulder with bakers, children, and soldiers, all staring wide-eyed at the spectacle of wealth, wine, and people trying not to faint from stress. Everything is exaggerated. The decorations, the feasts, the flattery, even the applause sounds nervous. Musicians perform until their fingers cramp. Actors recite verses about Caligula's greatness, and every time someone calls him divine, he nods like he's just remembering it's true. You stand off to the side, balancing a tray and trying to look both invisible and enthusiastic, a difficult combination. A senator accidentally spills wine on his robe. You can see the panic flash across his face. Within seconds, he's laughing and calling it an offering to Caesar. Caligula beams. Crisis averted. For now. Then come the reenactments. Historical scenes retold with the emperor in the starring role. He plays gods, heroes, conquerors, often all at once. The supporting cast is made up of whoever looks the most terrified. You've been lucky so far, but you know it's only a matter of time before you're handed a costume and told to look inspired. One afternoon, he stages a naval victory in the courtyard. There's no water, just blue cloth and imagination. He stands on a platform, shouts orders to invisible ships, and throws bread to the crowd, declaring it spoils of war. The crowd cheers, mostly because the guards are watching. When it's over, Caligula bows deeply, as if expecting thunderous applause from the heavens themselves. The crowd obliges. You clap too, not because you want to, but because you enjoy having hands. As you file back inside, you realize the truth. You don't live in Rome anymore. You live in a theatre where tragedy pays better than comedy, and where the curtain never closes. Serving Caligula is a bit like serving the weather. Bright sunshine one minute, thunderbolts the next, and if you complain, the lightning files a report. You wake up each morning wondering which version of the emperor you're getting today. Will it be generous Caesar, the one who tosses coins to servants and calls you his faithful friend? Or will it be Wrath of Jupiter, the one who throws furniture because someone sneezed during his lunch speech? You learn to read the signs, the tilt of his head, the length of his silence, the number of guards standing slightly too close. The palace becomes a living barometer. When Caligula laughs too loudly, people start saying prayers. When he's quiet for too long, they start drafting wills. Sometimes he's almost charming. He compliments your posture, asks about your health, even lets you eat warm bread instead of leftovers. You almost forget who he is. Then, mid-conversation, his expression changes, and he decides someone in the room is plotting against him. Everyone immediately becomes an expert in invisibility. He loves to surprise people. Once he strolls into the servants' hall carrying a laurel crown, declaring that the gods have visited him in a dream. You clap. He frowns. Why are you clapping? Do you think I'm joking? You stop. Why have you stopped? You realize this is less an emperor and more an interactive riddle with fatal consequences. On his calmer days, Caligula strolls the gardens feeding dates to peacocks and reciting poetry to statues. On the bad ones, he orders the same statues flogged for not applauding properly. It's unclear whether he believes they can hear him, or whether he just enjoys the performance. Either way, no one volunteers to fact-check. You start keeping track of his moods like a scholar. Yesterday, benevolent tyrant. Today, storm with human privileges. The palace gossips call it divine inspiration. You call it Tuesday. By sunset, the day might end with music, wine, and laughter, or with guards dragging someone away for breathing suspiciously. You stop predicting outcomes. The only constant in Caligula's moods is that they always have victims. And as you extinguish your lamp each night, you whisper the same prayer everyone in the palace knows by heart. Please, Jupiter, let him be bored tomorrow. You start to suspect the emperor doesn't sleep because he's afraid of everyone else. This means nights are optional. The palace never truly goes dark. Torches burn along the corridors, casting shadows that look suspiciously like people you owe apologies to. Somewhere down the hall, someone's always awake. Guards whispering, servants pacing, courtiers pretending to read poetry they can't see in the dim light. The emperor's schedule obeys no mortal clock. You could be summoned at dawn, dismissed at noon, then called again at midnight because he's decided the stars are applauding him and someone should witness it. When a messenger knocks on your door after sunset, you don't ask why. You just go. Refusing an invitation from a god is a health hazard. The palace at night feels alive, and not in a comforting way. You pass the kitchens where exhausted cooks stare into pots like philosophers searching for meaning. You glimpse musicians tuning their lyres in silence, hoping they're not being summoned for another improvised hymn. Every face carries the same expression, polite despair. When you finally see Caligula, he's usually pacing barefoot across marble floors, wrapped in a robe that might cost more than a villa. He talks to everyone and no one. Sometimes he recites verses, sometimes arguments, occasionally both. You nod when appropriate and pray he's addressing the air and not you. He loves these midnight sessions. "The moon understands me," he once says, staring out the window. You agree instantly. "Of course, Caesar." He narrows his eyes. "You mock me." You panic. "Never." He smiles. "Good. Then you'll stay until dawn to make sure she keeps listening." You do. The moon doesn't. By the time morning comes, you've learned that night in Caligula's palace isn't a time. It's an endurance event. You're reasonable emperors. When you finally collapse into bed, you hear footsteps again. Another summons, another performance. You laugh quietly to yourself, because at this point, what else is there to do? In Caligula's world, even exhaustion is a privilege. And you, lucky you, are very privileged indeed. It takes exactly one mistake to understand how things work in Caligula's palace. Not your mistake, thankfully, someone else's. You just happen to be standing close enough to learn the lesson vicariously, which is the safest way to learn anything around here. It starts innocently enough. A servant forgets to respond quickly when the emperor speaks. A full second passes, maybe two. In normal human time, that's negligible. In divine time, it's treason. The air freezes. Caligula tilts his head like a curious bird. The room goes silent, except for the sound of everyone collectively holding their breath. The servant stammers, apologizes, drops to their knees. Caligula smiles, not kindly, but as if he's just remembered something amusing from childhood. Then, in the same calm tone one might use to order bread, he tells a guard to remove the hesitation. No one moves for a heartbeat. Then they do. You don't look. You don't need to. The message is clear. Hesitation equals rebellion. Speech equals risk. Breathing is tolerated, for now. After that, the rules feel much simpler. When Caligula laughs, you laugh. When he cries, you cry. When he stares into space, you stare too, in case the space is looking back. You become fluent in survival. Every nod, bow and word rehearsed like lines from a tragedy you didn't audition for. Punishments vary depending on his mood. Sometimes it's public humiliation, sometimes banishment, sometimes a stern lecture about loyalty to